The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. Yes, it's another week. It's another Monday. We're excited to be here. We're coming to you live. Right now, we're coming to you live from a place in my house. And we're going to be coming to you live from in different places around the country. Today, we're going to be with you live for the next hour, talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. We welcome everyone who wants to be a part of this conversation. We, of course, welcome individuals who are on the autism spectrum because they are the beating heart, the center of our community. But we also welcome absolutely everyone who cares about them. So if you are a parent, you're a teacher, you're an aunt, you're an uncle, you're a practitioner, you're a wife, a husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, and you care about somebody on the autism spectrum, we hope you'll find a place here along with those individuals to answer questions and have conversations and see if we can't get you to the resources. I always say it's about information and inspiration here. And so hopefully we can get you information either that gets you to the next question or that helps you to get to the services that can help you or someone you love to be able to do the things that are important to you. That's what we are about here. It's not one size fits all, right? So please write in your questions because I don't know about you, but I'm not a mind reader. So anyway, why am I here? Because my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. And I had a lot I had to learn quickly to help him. And I got really, really lucky, not because I was like smart or figured it out or anything. I just lucked out. But I will say, I know somebody who has a pillow that says the harder I worked, the luckier I got. Well, I think it was the reverse for us. We got lucky and then we worked our tookuses off. And most importantly, it was the right thing. We did the right things and we did enough of it. And the right thing for my son was an early intensive behavioral intervention program that we so luckily got to do with the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, which is why I wax poetic about them all the time, because they gave my child the opportunity to do the things that he wanted to do in his life and gets to do now. That's the long and the short, right? But was it hard? Is there still stuff I'm learning? Are there still hoops we have to jump through? Yes. And my imagination was, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, we have found the answer of how to get on the path for us. But what about the parents that are in Kansas that don't have access to ABA? Because remember, this was like, 16 years ago? And I would just pace the floor thinking, what about people who don't live where I live and didn't luck out and didn't go to the house that I went to that they heard about? What about those people? And so that's why I'm here, because I want to help you to get to your answers no matter where you live in the world. No matter what you have currently access to now, I want to help you to get to some answer. I don't have the answers, but I can help connect you to some of the answers, but then you got to run. You got to run with it. You got to find your thing. You got to keep digging, but I'll hold hands with you. Si se puede, right? We can do this. You can do this, but you got to find your answers. And I just want to be like a clearinghouse where you can come here and go, okay, I'm looking for this. And I can point you in that direction or say, look over here, look over here, look over here. But that's all. You're going to have to do a lot of work because it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. Can I just say? Okay, so that's what we're here about. And we love it when you guys write in. We love it when you participate. because otherwise it's just me sitting in a room talking to a camera, and that gets a little crazy, right? I love I love it when I'm in a conversation with you guys. You guys lift us all up. And I'll tell you something else. People learn from the questions that you ask. I know in the beginning, I didn't even know what questions to ask. And then I would hear other people ask questions and I would go, oh, that I didn't know about that. Like, that's a thing. What are you talking about in your question? And then it opens up this whole other, avenue for you. So please write in your questions. There's lots of different ways to do it. Right now, the preferred methods are Facebook and YouTube. If you go to either one of those, you can go to youtube.com/autism-live and watch us on YouTube, or you can find us on Facebook. Just look for Autism Live and scroll until you see where it says we're live. And share us, would you please? So, somebody said something a couple weeks ago. They were like, I don't understand why there's not 1 million people watching this. I just want to tell you, there are 1 million people watching us, more than 1 million people across a year. But yeah, we think more people should be watching us on a regular basis. And the only way, we do not have a marketing budget. Let me just get real with you about that. We do not have a marketing budget. This is all grassroots, my friends. So if you like what you see here and you think it's worthwhile, tag a friend on it so that they see it on their Facebook, or share it. Start a watch party. Like us on Facebook so we come up in the feeds. Write a review for us on iTunes. Ooh, that shows people. And by the way, we are on iTunes if you want to watch the podcast. But live right now, we're live on our homepage, autism-live.com, but the chat button's a little sketchy right now. So I don't want to push you towards that. Write in questions on Facebook or YouTube if you're watching us live. If you are watching us recorded, you might be watching us on iTunes. You might be listening to us on iTunes. You might be listening on iHeartRadio, Deezer, or Spotify. So we are also on Periscope and Twitter, and we are about to be on a couple of more places. And so somebody asked, are we live today or is it a replay? Today is live. It is Monday. I got to look at the date, August 10th, and we are live. So you may write in your questions right now. We have started just for the month of August showing you some recorded shows on Tuesdays and Fridays because I got to spend a little bit of time before my child becomes a senior. But the rest of the time we are live. Okay. So feel free to write in to us right now. I want to say hi to Kirsten and to Macy. And I want to say hi to, is it Aixa? I don't know how you say that, but, and they said, good job, Shannon. You're trying to help those who need assistance. Oh my gosh, I promised I would pay that karmic debt down, trying to help wherever I can, but don't make me guess. Don't make me guess. Tell me what you need, right? I'm here to serve. Want to help if I can, because I don't want to tell you it's easy. It's not easy. We all know that, right? And especially in a pandemic. Ooh, ma'am, right? But I want to tell you that there's a community and there's people who care about you, and that's true. That there are people who are trying to figure out ways to help you, and they don't even know you, and you don't even know them, right? And so I want to be one of those people working to help you. Okay, what else? I do like to remind you that though I'm here and I'm passionate about the subject, I'm not an expert. Please don't confuse me with an expert. We have lots of experts on the show. I have a great one on the show for you later on, but I am not an expert. As I mentioned, I'm a parent of an individual who was diagnosed with autism. I feel like I have gone to that college, right? And learned a lot. Doesn't make me an expert. I have been hosting shows about autism for well over a decade now, interviewed everybody that I can get my hands on, right? Still doesn't make me an expert. Let's not get confused about that. Do I have an informed opinion? Yeah, I think I do, but that doesn't make me an expert. So you're going to listen to the expert advice. And if you want my informed opinion, I'm always happy to give that. Heaven knows I am always happy to give my opinion. All right, much love to all of you. Just sending you all a squeeze, right? Okay, virtual hugs all around. But we do like to start the show on Mondays with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are those experts talking about? Why do they have to use these terms? Do I really need to know this term? And we find that if we learn them, it saves us time and money. So that's the only reason why we do this. We give you first the actual definition, then I attempt to make fun of it, and because that's who I am. And then we give you the working definition and we try to give you an example so that you go, okay, maybe I have a beginning understanding of it, but don't flip out if you don't, because the autism journey is a long, long road and we're always learning. And sometimes you won't get something the first, second, third, fifth time, but somewhere down the road, when you see enough things and you hear enough things and you hear these things often enough, and we do revisit them, then, it starts to click and you go, oh, I know what that is now. I understand what it is that they're trying to say. And then worse, then you'll start using the term. And that's when you've turned to the dark side. So today's term, I know a lot of you are going back to school this week, next week, and the next couple of weeks, and it's a whole different ballgame, right? But we still want to be talking about this next term. Now, some people say FAPE for this. Let's take a look at what FAPE stands for. This is super important. This is the ground, the basement, the firmament upon everything else that's grown for your IEPs and educational programs. So FAPE is free, appropriate public education, a term frequently referred to in IEPs. Great. I'm no closer to knowing what it is, but free, appropriate public education. Not much to make fun of there, especially in a pandemic, right? So let's take a look at what our working definition is so that we can begin to understand, why is this so critical? Why is this the basis upon which everything grows? FAPE is what your child is legally entitled to in the United States. Okay, back it up then. What is it again? Free, appropriate public education. So, I don't have to explain to you what free is, except that there are times that people get offered something at public school and they go, well, but you'll have to pay for speech services, or I beg your pardon. My child is entitled to free. You don't have to buy the books. You don't have to buy anything. It's free. Then we move on to the really contentious word in this, because we know public, it's like public and education. We know what that is, right? So the word that's really the pivotal word here is appropriate. What is appropriate for your child? So your child in the United States, if they qualify, and qualifying means that they're blind, they're deaf, they have global developmental delays, they have a diagnosis of autism, they have, there's a whole host of things that can qualify your child. Being slow to speak, depends on who's giving you diagnoses about like whether you have a big enough issue, right? But if you have a diagnosis of autism, you are entitled to a free, appropriate public education. Now, it used to be, and not all that long ago, that the school district could say to you, oh, we don't have anything great for your child, so you'll have to go home and you'll have to find something else out. I remember when my child was diagnosed, I was like, can he even go to school? And was told, your child is entitled to FAPE, which means the school has to figure it out. That they can't just call and say, you need to come and get this child. We have nothing here for them. If they do that, they have to find something appropriate that's not public education, and they, not you, have to pay for it. Whew. I remember when my son was diagnosed at 3 going, oh my gosh, we don't have money for private schools. We don't have money for private doctors. What are we going to do? And when somebody told me, no, the school district has to pay for all of it, I both felt a release valve, but I felt guilt and I felt fear because I didn't know, right? And I will tell you that that school districts don't have the money to fund everybody. This is one of the big things. We're going to start talking. I know nobody wants to talk about politics with autism, but you know what? It's important. We need to start talking about, which candidate has the plan for special education and for fully funding IDEA. IDEA is the law that we now have that allows for this free appropriate public education. So if you live in the United States and your child is entitled to this and they have to work it out, but don't kid yourself, there's not enough money. IDEA has never been fully funded. Your school doesn't have enough money to do this. And so they play games. They borrow from Peter to pay Paul. And sometimes Peter is a little boy with autism and Paul is another little boy with autism. And they're like, we're going to give it to Paul because his parents squawked louder. That's, you know what I want to say, right? Editing. It's not okay. It's not okay. But as a parent, your first job is to advocate for your child. And then you can go back and advocate for all of the children with your vote in a lot of different ways. We have to fully fund IDEA because this is the law, but there's no funding for it for every child. And we know there's more children every single year. But your child is entitled to a free, appropriate public education without guilt. You pay your taxes. Don't feel bad about it. Don't feel guilty about it. And I'll tell you something that I know for a fact, that if they do this right with your child goes on to be a tax-paying citizen. My son already has worked a job and paid some taxes because they funded for him and we fought for him to get his FAPE, free appropriate public education. You're going to hear Bonnie later on in the show talking about FAPE, and I want you to know what it is. Free appropriate public education. We hang our hat on appropriate because if you go into a meeting and you say to the school, well, I want what's best for my child, they'll say, oh, well, the law doesn't provide for that. We only have to do what's appropriate. Lots of arguments about what is appropriate, but the Supreme Court told us 2 years ago that appropriate is not de minimis. De minimis is the Latin for the least you can do. So we're still waiting to hear about what it actually is, but it is not de minimis. They cannot just park your child in a classroom and not educate them. Woohoo! We're so glad the Supreme Court said that. Okay, moving on. We always have a question of the day for you. And our question today, oh, it froze on me. I don't remember what it is. Oh, does your child have a distance learning plan yet? We're going to be talking about that today with Bonnie. And if you're watching the show and you're like, Shannon, I don't know what a distance learning plan is, join the club. Because there's a lot of schools that don't know what a distance learning plan is. There's a lot of teachers who don't know what and there's a lot of parents who don't know. Bonnie has been talking about it, but I'm excited to see these and we need to be asking for them because our kids are entitled to them. So Bonnie's going to be talking about that with us. Okay, moving on. We always have a topic of the week. And then we're pretty quickly going to go to Bonnie because I hear she's here. Okay, so notice that the topic is back to school ? Because a lot of our kids are going back to school, but are they doing it from your living room or from their bedroom? And for some kids, is that going to work? So that's why the question mark. We're going to start to unpack all of this week, and we're going to keep unpacking it until we find the hope and the inspiration and the people that are getting this done and following their footsteps. One of the things about this pandemic is that it has really highlighted innovation and people who can be flexible and pivot. Isn't that the word for 2020? Pivot and do something different. Like we all had gotten into this thing where we were doing our thing. And teachers get into a groove where they're doing their thing, but there are some stellar rock star teachers out there who took this opportunity and said, okay, I can't teach the way I was teaching before. How can I teach better? How can I not just be in stasis and kind of slog through? How can I make this amazing? So, we need to be looking to those people and saying, okay, what'd you do? How can we replicate? Right? And by the way, some of those people, I know you all need to hear some hope today. Some of those people were working in the field of special education. Woo, extra challenges, right? And we have some questions that came in over the weekend that I shared with Bonnie. So we'll take a look at those. I just really quickly want to look at some things that you guys wrote. Did somebody write in from Finland? Oh my goodness, I'm very excited. Oh yes, we're going to join Bonnie in just a second. Beverly saying hi to you. Oh my goodness. We have a question about, is there any support for our transgender autistics? And I've got some resources for you. How excited am I about that? So we feature a lot on the show, the Ed Asner Family Center, and they're located here in Los Angeles, and they have all these classes and groups. Well, one of the groups that they have is a group that is all the initials, forgive me for not knowing all of them, but it's the LGBTQ, right? I don't have them all memorized, but there is a support group that is, and that includes transgender in it. And I don't know if you've seen the film that Spectrum Labs did, that what's it called? Boys Don't Wear Dresses. I hope you will check it out. It's at film festivals and winning. Go and check them out. Oh, what a great film. I think will be of great support to you. But then check out that support group. By the way, it's online now, totally free. You can access it from anywhere in the world. Go to Ed Asner Family Center and you'll see it's one of the choices in their list of things. edasnerfamilycenter.com. Hi, ma'am. My son is 21 and he has autism spectrum disorder and I'm from India. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, we're saying hello to Judy from Chicago, loving Chicago. And there is hello from Finland. I grew up with, there were friends of my aunts that were the Finger family from Finland, and they taught us finger poker from Finland. But it was like a tongue twister. Well, the Finger family reunion from Finland, right? Love Finland. Lisa, I'm grateful for you too. Oh, I'm so grateful and glad to know. We're always saying nobody here is alone, right? You feel like you're on a planet in Mars, but we hold hands. Si se puede, right? Oh, interesting. So somebody wrote in, hey Parker, and somebody wrote in and said, hi Shannon, I'm just telling you that a Big Brother house guest came out as autistic. We watch Big Brother in our house, and I can guess, but I shouldn't guess. Can you write and tell me which one came out as being on the spectrum? I think I know, but one never knows, does one? Hey Jill, I was just sold since we were offered therapy, we don't qualify for compensatory. He regressed and OT was useless via Zoom. Do I have rights? We're going to talk about with Bonnie in a second. Okay, I need the rest of that last question, Jackson, or twice today I've called Traven Jackson. Traven, I can't see the end of that last question. But anyway, let's welcome Bonnie Yates. Bonnie is a special education attorney joining us as often as we can get her on Monday when she's not in IEPs or court. She is with the Tollner Law Offices, an amazing special education attorney expert, and she shares lots of wonderful information with us, especially during this time. Okay, saying hi to Jacinda and hi to Christina and Jill and Parker, all of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So is Bonnie here? Bonnie, can you turn on your camera and your sound? And we will,
There she is.
Hey, Bonnie.
Hi.
I heard you for a second, but I do not yet. There you are. You're popping up. Look at you. You look all lovely and official and professional this morning. Are you off to court?
Not exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I won't press, but you look absolutely lovely.
Well, there are mediations and IEPs going on now, but I don't have one today. I have a couple later in the week. So,
well, but you look absolutely elegant.
Well, you always do. So
not even a little. But Bonnie, so excited that you're here. I was telling them that you're with Tollner Law Offices. Can you tell them a little about Tollner Law Offices, where to reach you, and the disclaimer?
I think I can do that. So Tollner Law Offices is an 8-attorney firm. We're based in San Jose. We have offices in Los Angeles and Orange County. You can find us on the web. Just look up Tollner Law Offices. We're an 8-attorney firm. We do special education, regional center, educationally related, civil rights matters, regional center, and we actually also help college students with disability-related problems. Although that's not what we're going to be talking about today.
Well, I sent you a couple of questions last night, and we've had a question that was just written in saying hello to a friend of ours in Ireland. We got a lot of different people watching from a lot of different places this morning. And just so you know, Bonnie, we do our jargon of the day, and today our jargon of the day was FAPE. So we just talked a little bit about that. But
Okay.
Somebody just wrote it in and said, I was just told we were offered teletherapy. Since we were offered teletherapy, we don't qualify for compensatory. He regressed and the OT was useless via Zoom. Do I have rights?
Okay, so I'm assuming that you are in the United States and you are operating under the purview of IDEA, and there's a general notion in special education law that if the district, let's say you're in the middle of a dispute with your school district and you've been taking your daughter to private counseling because you tried the district counseling and it was only 20 minutes and the personnel kept changing, and by the time you walked over to the room and got the session started, there wasn't really a lot therapeutically that was offered. Hopefully you gave 10 business days notice to your IEP team that you were going to pay for an outside service. And then the question, so in that situation, this typically comes up at mediation. The client shows us a receipt and they say, I had $7,500 worth of outside counseling. The district says, well, we offered the same amount of that counseling in-house, so we're not going to reimburse you for that. If the response is, yeah, well, but I didn't think it would be any good, so I didn't try it, that's not what this writer into the show is saying. They did try it and it was inappropriate, it wasn't FAPE, and their child regressed. So something everybody's going to hear me saying a lot in the next few months, and I'm sorry that I have to say it, but people, you are not going to get anything unless you take your district to due process. If you are not able to do that, the district is just going to tell you what they're telling this person. But the truth of the matter is, if you file for due process and you raise the issue of the inappropriateness of the offered therapy and the efforts you made to access it and what happened and what documentation you have that proves that, then to me, you have a very good case for comp ed. We already know the school districts are internally talking about how they need relief from the federal government because they're on the hook for so much comp ed.
Yeah. So let's unpack what you just said. First of all, you got to cross your T's and dot your I's. You must give the school district 10 business days notice before you're going to start something that they're not paying for, or you're never going to be able to get the money back. You may still not be able to get the money back, but you won't have a shot unless you've given them 10 business days notice, correct?
And you know, it's funny because you're sort of segueing into something that's quite different. And I was going to mention it on the show at some point because it's important. But I think running through the thread of our discussions, at least in California, and I suspect in a lot of other states, when you deal with a governmental entity, everything has to be documented. And that's because taxpayers are entitled to know these things and there has to be accountability. So for those of you, like I just talked to somebody that listens to the show, whose kid sustained a really bad bite from another child that broke the skin. I said, you got to file a claim form and put the municipality on notice, the governmental entity on notice that you're going to do this. Same thing with seeking, after the fact reimbursement for private services. The district has a right to know. The policy reason is the district is given 10 business days. So if they want to hold an IEP meeting and respond to your claim that you weren't offered FAPE, they have time to do it. So when you give them the 10 business days notice, tell them what you're purchasing and tell them why you have to purchase it. That it's a It's a product of the district's failure to offer FAPE during school closure from March 15th till the end of academic year 2019-2020, and you can't let your child regress any further, so you have to do this.
Okay, so you got to start there. You got to make sure you do that. But then in this current climate, because so many people are saying that they want compensatory education for things that are missed, Bonnie is telling you that in all likelihood, you're not going to get any comp ed unless you're willing to fight due process, because there's just too many people. And it sounds like to me that's how they're weeding out who means business and who doesn't.
Well, we're seeing it over and over again. And like we had an extreme case over the weekend where LAUSD said they wouldn't do something. LAUSD is doing a lot of like, our union won't let us do this, or, we think it's too dangerous. But, then in this case, what we did, in this case, we wanted an IEE. And we requested the IEE from the district on the 24th of April. And because school was closed, nobody responded. And so we sent this to CDE, California Department of Education. Within days of the client filing that complaint, LA Unified contacted the family and said, here's the list of the people you can choose from. Of course, it wasn't a correct statement of law, but here's a list of 3 people who can do your outside evaluation. And, we're off and running. So, I mean, if that client had just accepted at face value that LAUSD was never going to respond, and the things I've been hearing from LAUSD is it's too dangerous. We're not doing assessments, and outside people can't do assessments. If outside people do assessments, the only portion of the assessment they could do would be non-face-to-face record review and a few other things. So you got it. And when I say file for due process, I want you to know it doesn't mean due process hearing. What it means is you file a complaint outlining or underlining your allegations of no FAPE. And then the first thing that happens once that, hits OAH is somebody from the district sends you a letter and says, do you want to have a resolution session to discuss your concerns and try to resolve them? That can happen within 10 to 15 days of filing the complaint. And then after that, you have a separate right to go to mediation. And typically that's where your case is going to settle. So I'm not saying you're all going to have to go to a due process hearing, but I'm saying you're going to have to go above the IEP level to deal with people that have any authority to deviate from the template that the IEP team has been given.
I think where parents get afraid, and I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I think from what I hear and what I experienced is when we don't know how to file due process on our own. So it sounds like I need to lawyer up, which often, not everybody, but often that means a retainer, and that's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying.
Well, so let's just say you're the person that doesn't have the money to pay a retainer.
Okay, let's say that.
Okay, there's a lot a lawyer can do for you anyway, because a lawyer may be able to help you get an outside evaluation at district expense, which he or she is going to need most probably to do your due process case, so that the district understands and is motivated to settle by the fact that you have somebody that's done an evaluation that's critical of what you district offered. Part 2 is the Office of Administrative Hearings for the state of California maintains a list of free or low-cost attorneys, who will take a special education case for free or for low cost. So your fear that you can't do anything because you can't find a lawyer that will take the case is, I think, unfounded.
Okay, but see, I don't think how many years have I been doing shows and I didn't know that there was this list? Where do we write to get the list of the free or low cost attorneys?
I will send you something after the show.
Okay.
There's a person at the Office of Administrative Hearings. Her name is Laurie Crom, LAURIECROM. She's the person in charge of the list. Now, let me just tell you a little more about
That's California.
Yeah,
Right?
I can't speak for other states, but I think it's the same.
Okay.
Okay, when you come to us and you ask us if we will take your case for free or for a reduced rate, we will consider your circumstances, your individual circumstances, but you also have to be willing to give us confidential financial information like your tax return or a letter outlining your expenses and your inability to pay. But
Yeah.
we will go through that process with you. And we understand that if we take the case and it's a strong case, we are going to have a good chance of having our attorney's fees paid by the district at the end of the case.
So we really, and I'm always trying to say to people, I know that sometimes it's hard to get to the place in your mind where you're like, I'm willing to spend money on a lawyer, but I've seen it time and time again that the people who spend the time and the money to get a lawyer in the beginning, yes, it can be a little bit scary financially, but they end up getting so much more in services than what they would have gotten. So it's like, do you not do a retainer with a lawyer to not get services, and now you're like so much more in the hole financially. If we matched it up and said how many dollar amount of services for what you spent with a lawyer, or just time, how much time that you spent doing things because you weren't an expert for something, I know the equation is better if you lawyer up. I know that it is.
Well, there's a really good study that we could share on the show. I wonder if I could find it. I know where it was published. It's by a guy named Jed Rakoff. He's a federal judge, not in the Ninth Circuit, but I think in the eastern part of the United States. He wrote an article about how people in the United States fare if they represent themselves versus if they use attorneys. And I will send that on if I can get my hands on it, because I read it and I was surprised at how disparate the result was. If you're in a situation where you could pay a flat fee, of $2,500 or $5,000, first of all, the lawyer's going to try to get it back for you at the end of the dispute. Yeah. Second of all, depending on the order of magnitude, I'm representing a family locally. They've paid about $5,000. They'll get some of it back. Their daughter went from being outside the district because the family had been tricked into enrolling her in she was in the hospital and she needed an educational program. So they enrolled her in something else, something to get that. And then inadvertently were, disenrolled her from the district because people in the district didn't explain to them that was going to be the practical effect. So she went from having no IEP in the district to she's in a residential placement that costs $10,000 or $15,000 a month, and she's going to be there for at least a year. So not every case is like that, but that's an example of where the parents got very good dollar value for their initial investment. Now I'm, negotiating with the attorney in terms of the attorney's fees so that I can try to get us paid and get them paid. But the point is, that's an illustration of how the people who designed IDEA intended it to work. Yeah. It's supposed to be available for people who can't pay an hourly lawyer fee. Some people can, some people can't. People who can't, if they have good facts and good documentation, we can get them an outside evaluation at district expense, we can still help you. And most of the lawyers that do this work, frankly, get a little bored with a steady diet of representing affluent clients that could pay for the services themselves, probably, if they had to. That's not, I'm not trying to talk badly about those people, but the point is, most people see the equity issue that exists all through education.
And you didn't get into this to just help that segment of the population. And I think that's part of the reason why you talk about on the show that, people can reach out to you, but if they're not in the state of California, that they can go to COPA, COPAA.net, and that there are attorneys like you. And a lot of times they are parents, and they get it, and they'll help.
And I guarantee you, not everyone on that COPA list is going to take free or low-cost cases, but quite a few of them probably will.
There we go. And that's across the country, copaa.net. Okay.
You're getting good, Shannon.
Right, I'm learning. How many years has it been? I should know. Okay, can I move to some of the questions that I sent you last night? Okay, the first one for Bonnie. I reached out to my child's school and asked to hear what the distance learning plan is for school. Starts next week. I was told they wouldn't be able to give me a plan until the teachers return. My daughter with ASD is in junior high, LAUSD charter, with a diagnosis of ASD. She has an IEP and is 80-20 mainstreamed with resource. When school closed, she had reduced hours, like 2 hours a day. We got worksheets from the resource teacher for her to do instead of schoolwork, but absolutely no help. Do I really have to wait until the teachers come back?
If she's asking whether she really has to wait for the teachers to come back to get a distance learning plan, I think that's an unsettled area of the law. But if your school is close to opening, even if the teachers aren't back, I would say that there's no reason they can't tell you what they're planning to do, because they would theoretically be preparing for it now. I think as a fail-safe, and I'm going to recommend this to folks up and down the state, if you aren't sure, request your IEP now. I think I mentioned on the show last week that San Francisco Unified is planning on doing, I think it was San Francisco Unified, 7,800 IEPs in September, because their position is there has to be a reckoning after school closure to figure out where the special ed kids are at. You can't just kind of jump in and keep going without any discussion about what happened in the months before. That's a very responsible position for a district to take. And I suspect some districts are going to fight not to have to do that because of the administrative time. But really, by now it's April, May, June, July, August, 5 months since these kids have received any regular instruction, conceivably. There has to be some accounting. There has to be some taking stock of where to start the distance learning now.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Somebody just wrote in and said, is it very common that my district has yet to send any type of outline for our SPED children? Not
Yes.
one update.
Yes, it is very common. And in fact, if you don't make your presence and needs known, you may be invisible for many months. I have clients in Southern California. They were never given a distance learning plan. There was no IEP held for them. The district completely ignored them. And since the client didn't know better to make her child's needs known, the whole summer went by without her notifying me that her child was getting completely ignored. And this was a child that had a heavy menu of services in her public school classroom, including full-time ABA, speech, OT, and so on. And the district just dumped the whole thing.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we're in the squeaky wheel gets the grease syndrome here. But I also want to say to parents, this is part and parcel of why I am always active in my either the PTA or parent association, whatever you have at your school. You know, if you have the time, if you have the bandwidth, volunteer for something. You don't have to run the thing, you know, but volunteer for something. And every single school on their parent association should have a special needs, like, you know, they call them different things. It's the special need ombudsman, or, you know, whatever it is. Find out who that is or become that. Work, you know, from the inside out. But, you know, if we should all be on the phone to our schools this week if school is starting anytime soon and saying, when are we meeting? Shouldn't we, Bonnie? Shouldn't we be saying, what's the plan?
Yes.
What's going on?
You all should be engaging with your school district and telling them what your experience was during school closure, and telling them what you need at home, and telling them that it's not satisfactory to not have a week where there's a lot of scheduled events. And, you know, if you want some in-home services, you're going to need to push for them.
But I gotta say that I feel, and it's been my experience, my kid's about to be a senior, so I'm just about done with this, but it's been my experience that I get more traction at all the schools that he's been at if they know who I am and they see that I'm willing to also contribute to the school of my time and energy, not although money too. If they know that you are somebody who isn't just a complainer, I think you get more, you get their ear more. That's my philosophy. Another question here. My first grader with an autism diagnosis is expected to do school online in the fall in 2 weeks. I have asked the school to tell me how this will work differently than in the spring. In the spring, we stopped trying because they expected him to sit in front of a computer to learn, and he wouldn't do it. I don't know how to make him. They said they will schedule an IEP meeting 5 weeks in to see how things are going. This is crazy to me.
Do we know if this person's in California?
We do not know if that person is in California.
Okay, if you are in California, you should write them a letter, tell them you need an immediate IEP. There's no such thing as an emergency IEP. So you got to tell them that your kid is regressing, that what they proposed didn't work. Here's the reasons it didn't work. And tell them if you can't get something in place soon, you're going to file a complaint with either the federal government or the California Department of Education. It's not okay to say it didn't work and we'll see you when we see you.
Yeah. But we also, Bonnie, can't expect the school to be mind readers. We know that they're trying their best in a circumstance that they have never been in before. And if we don't tell them it's not working, we shouldn't assume that they know it's not working.
Well, I think that's laughable. I think there's a consensus in this country that distance learning has been a failure for most students. I think there's a consensus in this state that a deal was made way too early on, at least with LAUSD, about how little or much they were going to do. Why are the private schools able to provide 6 hours a day of instruction that is, relatively speaking, engaging and of quality? Why hasn't the district consulted with somebody like Air Tutors to figure out how to deliver a better program than what was admittedly put together in a rush without an experiential background to draw from? We aren't there anymore.
I think that unfortunately a lot of schools spent a lot of the summer dinking around and trying to figure out how they could do a hybrid plan, because I think they all thought that was going to be the direction. Now, some people are going back with a hybrid and some people are going fully back with the masks and not even doing partially online.
Yeah, well, stay tuned on that one.
Right, because we see how well that's working for the NFL and the baseball leagues.
Well, how about Arizona? They tried to reopen a bunch of stuff and it all shut a week later. I mean,
right. But they wasted a lot of time over the summer trying to figure out how to have hand washing stations and what tape to put on the floor and train people to wear masks, instead of thinking, how are we actually educating? That's the thing that makes me, slightly crazy. Because we did have, when they went out the first time, there was no notice, but we've had, as you said, tons of notice now so that they could have figured it out and learned from people who are doing it well. We hope they're learning their lesson. Okay, so I just have to say that somebody has written in and said, their name is Raul, and they said, I'm here because my nephew is autistic and I want to help him in reaching his full independence and development, and I love him. And we are welcoming you here. We love it when all relatives and friends, we always say here that it's that the beating core of individuals on the spectrum, but everybody who loves them. And so thrilled that you are here. So Bonnie, that's all I've got in terms of questions, but I know, was there something else that you wanted to talk about? Otherwise, I'm gonna move on to something else. Tell me what you would like to.
Do we have like 5 minutes?
We have 5 minutes.
Okay, there's something I want to read.
Okay.
All right. Again, I'm reading to you. This is what the other side is thinking about. They're thinking about many, many things, but here's one that I think would be relevant to you. Okay, ensure paraprofessionals are trained for return to school. Districts need to make sure that their paraprofessionals are trained on all new safety and instructional protocols for the upcoming year, said Sarah Douglas, an associate professor at Michigan State University and researcher on paraprofessional topics. Well, this is interesting. Did you know that somebody could have a professorship in paraprofessional topics? I didn't either, but LRP, Special Ed Connection, interviews people like this and shares the information with educators and attorneys for educators. So here's her comment. Historically, paraprofessionals are not well trained and supported in tasks they are already required to do. Now you may see paraprofessionals who don't know the new protocols they're supposed to be following. We do a good job sharing information with teachers, but it doesn't always trickle down. Regardless of their role, ensure the paraprofessionals in your district receive high quality training and supervision, Douglas said. That can't be forgotten because otherwise gaps will continue to widen for the students with disabilities who they support. Look at these aspects of needed training, and they go over this. They talk about training them in safety protocols. For example, make sure they're aware how wearing a face mask can greatly impair a student's ability to understand what's going on. Go over what the paraprofessional needs to do if a student with a behavioral issue takes off his mask, if a student with autism struggles to read cues from a teacher's or paraprofessional's face because of the mask, or if a student who's hard of hearing cannot understand what the teacher or paraprofessional is saying because the voice is muffled and they cannot read their lips. Some teachers say they have a microphone in their mask or outside so students with hearing impairments can hear. I don't know if those methods and recommendations are being passed on to paraprofessionals who need them as well. In cases where districts don't go back to school in person, will paraprofessionals be providing distance opportunities for students? Will they be doing that solo? That's a huge concern and question, Douglas said. In schools, paraprofessionals work in small groups with students, not in isolation from teachers. But if the classroom is virtual, districts will need to figure out how their teachers will supervise paraprofessionals. Occasionally, students flourish in an online environment, but for the most part, students with disabilities are not part of that group, Douglas said. They need one-on-one sustained attention. There are ways to do that online, but it's a matter of training and teaching staff to engage the students appropriately. I worry that will get lost in the shuffle with everything to get set up. For example, if you use online services such as virtual games and YouTube to engage children, they will need an appropriate access to accessories such as headsets and other technology. Paraprofessionals would need to become knowledgeable in these resources and make sure students have access to needed equipment, she said. I'm almost done, Shannon. Delivery considerations. Districts will need to consider how they will provide this additional training to their paraprofessionals, Douglas said. Most likely it will need to be done in an online format, and they will need to figure out the most effective way to do it. Not all online training is created equally, Douglas said. Just having a Zoom meeting where there's a lecture is not as effective as following up, observing them doing things with students and asking about challenges, she said. Be sure to include active engagement in your training for paraprofessionals through regular check-ins for understanding and connecting what they're learning to their specific situations. Okay?
Yeah, well, that's a mouthful, but it's all good stuff. We had a bunch of people write in asking questions while we were doing that. Our parent who had said that they'd gotten not a single update about SPED children from her school, she says, I sent an email to them requesting an update on his IEP and some focus points. They have not responded once, and she does live in Southern California.
Good. Tell them that if she doesn't hear from them by the end of the day on Wednesday, she's going to bring in the California Department of Education. She'll file a complaint with them. They'll hear. Okay. You'll hear from them after that. I promise you.
So say that again slowly. So write to them and say, if I don't hear from you by Wednesday, I'm going to
give them 48 hours. If I don't get an answer to these questions, I will have no choice but to ask for the California Department of Education to get involved.
There we go. Okay, somebody else says that they have not yet been able to find copaa.net. You can also try copaa.org. It used to be that the net worked and then they went to org, but you could, for a while, you could go to either, and maybe they're
Oh,
not.
that's right, they
full
changed
anymore.
it. Okay, well, I'll have to change the way I announce it on the show. Good.
So copaa.org, try that for me and then let me know if that works, please. What do you do when you feel like nobody at school is qualified to be over your child's behavior intervention plan?
I really think we've talked about that already on the show. If you had an person or virtual consultation with me, the first thing I'm going to look at is what were your facts for the last 2 years? What happened during school closure? What is the possibility of getting you an outside evaluation at district expense? We're going to go through the whole analysis, but we're probably not going to be able to fix it with a phone call. We're probably going to have to be more visible than that. The analysis that we've come up with is you look at what the child's IEP says, you compare that to what was offered between March 15th and the end of the school year. You see what evidence you have of response to intervention or regression. And from there, you calculate how much compensatory ed you think you're owed and of what kind, and that forms the basis of your due process complaint.
Okay.
I'm just not confident that going to the district and making rational arguments at the IEP level or the principal level is going to get you to where you need to go. If it would, guys, I wouldn't have done this for 25 years because there wouldn't have been any work. There is so much work. There's so much work for attorneys, you guys, because the districts are not compliant. This is not a Los Angeles problem. It's not a Southern California problem. It's a world problem.
Yeah.
And I say world because I've done a little bit of visiting in third world countries when I've been able to. And believe me, they don't have FAPE there. Let me just assure you.
Yeah. We have somebody writing in from Pasadena. They say, my son, 12, adopted at birth, has FASD and ASD and RAD. We've learned he only learns with project building. School's distant learning is mediocre. How can we get traction with the school? He's entitled to one-to-one, but not using it. He has ADHD and the distance learning is too flat. He's in 7th grade, but the school says he reads and does math of a kindergartner or first grader. And again, in Pasadena.
Yeah, so that's when you really do need a consultation with an attorney. There's some really specific information to discuss about his diagnoses and how they interact and what you need to do to look at the medical parts of that and what parts are the district's responsibility. It sounds like there's a reading issue. It sounds like there's a lot of issues. I think it would be very difficult to unpack that for me on the show in 30 seconds or 60 seconds and tell you what to do.
But now is a good time, because I have to answer a question. Now is a good time for you to tell us how people can get a hold of you at Tollner Law Offices if they want to do a consultation with you, and then we'll go over the COPA thing if they're not in California.
Okay, that's super easy. So if you look up Tollner, Tollner Law Offices, there is a form right on the website. It's not long at all. You just fill it in. You say you want a consultation with me and it'll get scheduled. It'll happen the same week. If you are outside of California, there's an organization called Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates. It's a 50-state organization of special ed professionals. If you go on that list, you can find lawyers in your state. You can call those lawyers and talk to them and see which one you resonate with and who you feel like you can work with given their financial arrangements with you. Most of the people that are members of COPA are members of COPA because they want to be a part of something bigger that can take positions on national issues. It's not a networking organization in the sort of conventional sense. It's a group of really committed professionals who care deeply about special education and come together frequently online, but at least annually to discuss policy issues. And I think that's a very good starting place for interviewing an attorney.
Okay, and they wrote back and said that .net is still working, COPAA.net, but I know that .org also works. Last minute question here.
Oh,
If I
guys,
file,
you can just add, you can just Google Council of Parent Attorneys and Advocates.
but
And then-
.NET is working. So I just wanted to make sure. So last minute question here. If I filed a complaint with the Texas Education Agency and they substantiated all of my claims and denial of FAPE, should I file for due process to pursue private placement?
You
But this is
should
Texas.
consult with an attorney in Texas. The guy who I think is really good is Marty or Martin Cirkiel, Cierkiel. He's on the COPA directory. The fact that the Texas state agency has made findings that the district is out of compliance with the IDEA means the district has liability for compensatory education. That's a case I would think a lawyer would be interested in.
There you go. You want to say the guy's name again one more
Martin
time?
Cirkiel, Cirkiel, I believe. Nice guy.
Okay.
That's what I
And that's all the time we have for Bonnie today, because I have to end up with a 2-minute thing here at the end to answer a question and tell them what else is happening this week. But Bonnie is again with the Tollner Law Offices. If you have a legal need in California, whether it's Northern or Southern, we want you to reach out, as Bonnie said, to Tollner Law Offices and see if you can get some help and support, because there's a lot going on right now. Now is not the time to be digging your head in the sand about education, because it's going to be a rough year if you go, oh, I'm just going to see how the cards play out. Not a good time.
We're really worried about this, and we're really rushing to stay apace of all the changes. If you guys feel overwhelmed by this, I want you to understand it's a steep learning curve for all of us. I mean, somebody posed a question the other day, does the fact that school opens for online distance learning mean school is open or not? And that's just a novel question. Nobody's answered it before, right?
Ooh, yeah.
But
All right. Well,
Northern California said school won't open till people go back to school. So we don't have any duty to do this initial assessment for eligibility because school's not open. What?
Exactly.
Help.
Craziness.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate having you as someone that helps us to sort this out, Bonnie. Thank you so much, and thank everybody.
I think we help each other, Shannon. Thank you. Thank everybody for all those great questions, great participation. Have a good week, everybody. Stay sane.
All right. Thanks, Bonnie. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good.
Just wanted to address, somebody wrote in and said that they are getting their, they're working to get their RBT, and that they want to know what the function of a bowel movement is. And I just wanted to take a quick second of a good, healthy BM, a bowel movement. I just wanted to take a second because we talk about function of behavior all the time, and we're all engaged in behavior. And there is some behavior that we do because we choose to do. There's some behavior that we do because we feel compelled to do. And then there's some behaviors that typically are automatic, right? That are things like we just inhale and we breathe and we don't have to think about it. But you know how sometimes I had this happen the other day where I was doing something and I forgot to breathe. And then I was like, taking a big breath because I forgot to breathe. So I just want to be clear that a lot of times we talk about the fact that we don't have a lot of control over behavior. We have control over antecedents and consequences. So I don't want to say that having a healthy BM doesn't have a function, because of course it does. And that when we have healthy BMs, we all feel better, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that we all go eat kale and flaxseed so that we make sure that we have a healthy BM. Although if we did, we would all have the healthy BM and then we would feel better, right? So it's one of those things that's a little bit dicey, right? And if what we're trying to do is to accomplish the child having a healthy BM, then we want to be looking at antecedents and consequences. That's really what we want to be looking at. That we want to be making sure that we are setting the stage for the healthy BM, that the diet is healthy, that he's drinking enough water to have a healthy BM. We also want to look medically, like, are we making sure, does this child need to be on a probiotic? What's going on intestinally that's making it so that we're not having a healthy BM, and let's set him up for success, right? We definitely want to do all that, but then we also want to put consequences in place that, because eventually we want him to feel what it feels like and have that be the reward. But until then, we're going to give external rewards for different parts of the behavior to get him to have the healthy BM. So it might start with, the child, just if he'll eat things that will help him to have the healthy BM, we're going to reward that, right? Might be that we might even not work on the toilet to start with, to make sure that because if they're having tons of diarrhea, we may decide to stay in the pull-up for a little while until we can get that under control, right? So work with your BCBA, but look more to the antecedents and the consequences. And by consequences, we are never, ever punishing someone for, having diarrhea. Like, there's no punishment. We're talking about rewards for behaviors that go along with it. So rewarding somebody eating or drinking the proper things to have the healthy BM. Does that make sense? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I addressed that. Okay, so I got to tell you about what's happening this week. So tomorrow we are showing an oldie but a goodie of Temple Grandin, because we just have these archives of her and she just says the most amazing things, and I've got some meetings I've got to do. So we are, we're turning Tuesdays for the moment, for the month of August, into Temple Grandin Tuesdays, and eventually we're going to have her back on live. But we've got some interviews that you guys haven't seen that in a long time that are really spectacular. So check that out tomorrow. It's like that booster shot in your arm where you go, it's like a mega vitamin B shot where you go, oh, okay, I have the energy to go on, because Temple's so awesome. Then we're back here on Wednesday with Dr. Grant Pichet, Ask Dr. Doreen, which is really wonderful. On Thursday, we are going to welcome a really remarkable lady who's been on the show a couple of times, Anne-Laure Davin, who is a self-advocate, a woman who was diagnosed on the spectrum well after she'd had her children, and how that changed her life, and who is now very much into meditation, and is doing a meditation class online that is a free meditation class online for folks on the spectrum and for people who care about them. So she's going to be with us on Thursday to talk about the role meditation has taken in her life and how it has helped her with her anxiety and to be able to cope with all the things. And especially, as she said, in these current circumstances, we need this more than ever. And then on Friday, we are doing an oldie but a goodie, Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. It's one that features Ileana Gershlovitz in Africa, author of an amazing book, Saving My Sons. And we're also having Vince Redmond on the show, but it's recorded. So I just want to be upfront and honest with you that for the month of August, Tuesdays and Fridays, unless we give you other notice, are pre-recorded. So, but that's not permanent, just putting it out there. All right, you guys, I adore you. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here with you. I will see you again live on Wednesday, but be back here tomorrow, same time, same bat channel. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.